Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inflectra's Level 2 test automation series called Planet Test Automation First Steps. You are joining us for our fourth webinar in this series, and today's topic is automating REST SOAP API testing. Today's webinar will be presented by Alexey Grinievich, a senior software developer at Inflectra. He holds a doctorate in applied mathematics and has been working in the IT industry for the past 20 years. For the last 10 years, his major interests have been automated testing, legacy APIs, and desktop system testing. My name is Teresa, and I'll be your moderator today. Before I turn it over to Alexey, let's cover a few housekeeping issues. Today's webinar will last for about an hour and will consist of a theoretical part, a practical part, and end with a Q&A session. We ask that you save questions until that time and use the built-in questions tab to send questions. These will then be read out and answered. Today's webinar will be recorded. In a couple of days, we'll make the webinar recording available on Inflectra's YouTube channel under the playlist called Planet Test Automation First Steps. Please note that this webinar playlist is unlisted for the duration of the webinar series. So prior to February 1st, 2020, you will need to have a direct link to access the recordings in this webinar series. Links to each webinar recording will be emailed to you a few days after the live webinar, or you can subscribe to Inflectra's YouTube channel to get notified when new recordings become available. To give you a little more information about the webinar series as a whole, Planet Test Automation First Steps is Inflectra's Level 2 automation webinar series. This series builds on Inflectra's earlier test automation series, Test Automation Demystified. This Level 2 series moves beyond the fundamentals and dives into the major technologies where test automation is used. The 5 webinars will cover UI, desktop, mobile, and API test automation. You can learn more about the series by clicking on the URL shown in your handout and also on the screen here. For those of you not familiar with our test automation webinars, we recommend that you check out our Level 1 series, Test Automation Demystified. It's available on our YouTube channel. We are also pleased to offer Planet Test Automation First Steps as a certificate course. The series participants are eligible to receive a certificate of completion, given that they meet the webinar attendance and quiz requirements. If you wish to get a certificate, you'll be asked to take a short quiz after each webinar. To make things easier for you, we will send out a webinar follow-up email that contains all the materials covered in the webinar, including links to each quiz. For a full set of certificate requirements, please refer to the Frequently Asked Questions document linked in your handout. Last but not least, as I mentioned earlier, each webinar in the series has a practical part. We will demonstrate the key practical test automation concepts using Inflectra's own platform, Rapise. If you haven't downloaded the tool yet, please visit www.inflectra.com/Rapise. Feel free to use Inflectra's 30-day free trial. Now, with all that out of the way, I'll turn it over to our presenter, Alexey.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm Alexey Grinievich, and let's proceed to today's topic. So we will talk about API, and when we talk about API, it's something really low level, and despite the fact we try to keep some ratio between giving some theory and then providing some practical examples, in the API world, like 90% of what we are talking about are low-level practical examples. So we start from our demo application under test. This is a well-known medical recording system. You may find it on this URL, openmrs.org. It provides free instance that you may just log in right now and try. So and it's really matured. It has many installations and it has live community, and so it's something is production ready. So it's good example application that we may write tests for. And one thing that we are going to do with this application, let me just show it. I have one instance of it installed. Let me go to its login page. So good news about this application. good for me, and maybe for some of you. You may easily download it and then run it using just one click. So it doesn't require any installation setup. It's still full featured. It has demo data, so you may just use it for your own purposes. I don't mean not for hospital, but for tests or software learning purposes. So I'm logging in using the password they provide. This is my local instance of this application. I'm going to use a bit different URL here. I use the host file to define it. I called it open MRS demo. It's my local host. This is the server running this application. It's also on this local host, but it has this URL. Okay, now I'm logging in. Has to choose the location, say registration desk. So we are inside this application. Its primary purpose of this screen are handling of patients, scheduling appointments, visits, and dealing with patient records and patient visits. So what happens if when I go to register patient, when I type some name here and proceed to fill in other details, for example, John Smith just came and attends our registration desk in hospital. When I type in it, I see that similar patient is found. This is the automatic merge feature. If I expand this, I see that similar patient with this ID is already entered in the system. It has this birth date, this address. So it's for the case this patient were here before, long time ago. He visits. It's his second visit. He maybe doesn't remember if he was here or when he was here. So it's good thing to find he's our existing patient, and instead of entering new one, just reuse an existing one. So this is the feature that we are going to test today. So this is a merge feature and prerequisite. So we may record the test at doing this merge, and the prerequisite for this feature is that the patient that we're entering here in the system, it should already exist. So the system has demo data. It may be used for different testing purposes. So we want to make sure that only one one specific patient with specific name already exists, and only one exists, exactly one exists, before running actual merge test. So this is our goal. Now, the way how we go and achieve it is we going to first prepare data. So we check if patient exists. If it doesn't, then we create new patient. If it already here, we check if only one exists. If more than one patient exists, we consider that this system is data is not clean or corrupted, and we cannot proceed with testing. It's just our decision. So we are going to fill back Inspira saying that data is not in consistent state. So this demo system needs some treatment before we may run automated test with it. If there is only one such patient, we are okay. We read its ID and we actually do test for this merge functionality, which is very simple. Okay. Now, we are going to use two APIs to achieve what we just scheduled to achieve in today's session. First API is REST API. This open MRS system has a REST API available, and we are going to use it to find existing patient, create new patient before running actual UI test. So the feature we are testing, merge, is UI feature. We have to use UI, but creating patient, we may do it in advance using API, and using API is really encouraged here because API is much faster than UI. In general, it's always faster. Next, we want, in case of something inconsistent in the system, we want to create an incident in Spira. And for this purpose, we are going to use one of Spira APIs. Actually, Spira has plenty of APIs, integrations. So we are going to use one of them. It's SOAP API. Spira also has REST API, but since we want to demonstrate both REST and SOAP this session, we use SOAP today. Okay, so let's proceed. As we talked earlier, the recommended ways of approaching to test implementation it contains these 4 stages. First analyze, then try, then plan implementation, and then implement. If we talk about, so it was, I told it about the test case and test set as a general phase. Actually, the same sequence of steps applies to lower level and even to API level. If we are going to use some to achieve some goal using an API, we still may use these 4 steps and we recommend you to use them to get to your goal quicker. And I'll show you today how to use this approach. So first we do analyze REST. Now I'm just going to close this presentation, so all interesting things will happen like live. So we have this open MRS system. Now we know that we want to use REST API. So what we do, I'm just Googling for open MRS, then REST. So you see it finds some documentation pages about REST interface. I just click the first one and I'm getting to appropriate documentation page about REST interface. Now, if I scroll here, I see it's quite long and it says some discussions inside. So of course, I may read through all of it, but usually there's some shortcut path. So usually when I deal with new API, first thing I search for, you see it's highlighted, I'm searching for the word authorization or authentication on the page. Because we saw that system requires username password. For us to log in, definitely it would require some kind of login through API, and definitely the first thing we will do with this system. So anyway, it's better to just start with login, and while doing that, we probably will learn enough to proceed and understand what other entry points are here. Okay, I see some topic about authentication, and here in this topic, I see that there is a recommended way of doing a login. We need to create a session to work with the system. So they provide some URL. This URL usually means I take the whole URL, then I cut the part after the beginning. So it's a root of my installation. And then I use this trailing part to make the whole URL for the request. 2 slashes, remove one, hit enter. And it didn't work. You see no such entry points, so no such API entry. When I look at this URL, I see that this open MRS is for second time here, probably by mistake, probably the typo in this documentation. So it was just to try to remove this, because it would be logical to have the root of the system, which is open mrs.demo, then open mrs-standalone, then web service, then REST, then version and session. So this is more logical. So I hit enter and I see I get some meaningful result here. So it looks like it returns some information and it looks like what I need. Okay, now let's go to RPs. So next step, so I'm currently at the first stage, which is analyze. My next step would be try. But in the REST world, analyze and try are really mixed, because Usually, I can find entry point, but with REST, it's not specified how I'm going to get specific data. Data fields are usually not specified with REST. So I'm just creating a new test. I'm calling it REST for REST entry point. The type, okay, let it be web browser. Let it be Firefox, although it's not so important. I'm not going to use browsers. And for the language here, I will use JavaScript. In general, we do recommend to use RVL for scriptless testing. But in this case, in case of web services, in RPs, you have to use JavaScript. And it has some purpose why you have to, because you will see it right now. We'll just say that it is because web services require that data structures to be passed, and you will have to be familiar with JSON to pack data, pack input parameters, pack headers, and everything else you will see today. So anyway, it's low-level coding, and in JavaScript is much better suited for such kind of coding than RVL. RVL is for higher level tasks. Although in RPs it's a two-layer approach, so we may implement specific routines in JavaScript and then simply call these functions or scenarios from RVL in our higher level scenarios. Okay, I'm hitting two tools web services. I'm going to create REST service in entry point, and it would be, I just will give it some shorter name. Great. Okay, it updates the main file because it should add the REST service definition. Now, I'm going to start with the first request here, and the first request here is this one, login. Okay, I'm going to put it here. Let me give some meaningful name to display an object tree. Let it be session. So here is the basic request. I'm just going to try. I know that I need to specify something else, but with REST services, it's easier to you may do more trying. It doesn't hurt, so you may quickly see. So yeah, my login is not successful. I see that I'm not authenticated, so I have to insert some more data. Quickly looking at the documentation here, I will see that it requires me to pass some authorization. Also, let me just do it. I will add a header, a request header authorization. Add header authorization. And now, as recommended here, it should be authorization, then basic, and then some special keyword with encoded username and password. Okay, let's go on. So it would be basic space, then it should be this string admin username and password, but encoded in base 64. So quickest way to encode in base 64 is to Google for base 64 encode, and you will find online encoder. I don't recommend you to do this for some really sensitive data, but for demo data and for quick encoding, that's perfect. In encode, and here is the string. Okay, I may just copy it, paste it here instead of my real password. Okay, and now I may just send this request again. And you may see that I am authenticated. So it's authenticated and it returns true, that is, authentication is successful. So now I have the first thing, first request. Next, what I'm going to do next, I want to get list of patients. So looking at this document, I may find that this REST API is more or less standardized. So it uses HTTP keywords for getting information. So if we, for example, go resource, in this case is like a database table name. So it would be patient resource or appointment or any like entry that is there in the database. Visit is also resource. And then this Q query is a way to search for something, and this slash ID is a way to retrieve specific entry. So let me quickly try both ways. So I'm going to just clone this request and give it to name find patient clone. So I have the same URL. I'm going to change the last part. So resource was session, now resource is patient. You see, I was preparing for webinar and it remembers my URL. Okay, so it's patient and Q is query, just like it's said in this documentation. And then I'm going to find John Smith. Okay, you see I have many Johns here, John Tyler, John Smith, maybe more. So let me make more specific. Yeah, John Smith. And how many do I have? I have exactly one in this case. So this is John Smith. You may see it's here. And now I may show you how to, I don't need it in my test, but let me show you how to get specific information about this patient. So I may find its ID. It's here. It's ID of the John Smith. I copied it. I clone this this request. I'm doing another get patient to get specific patient. Now my goal is to, instead of query, use the recommended way with ID. So I put patient slash specific ID, and I'm expected to read a patient. You see, I'm getting patient, and this patient actually contains some ID, but it's a part of display name, and then it contains a person record. So actually, this database, which was a surprise for me, contains persons, and then persons become patients. Then they get assigned additional information. So person is just a human, and the human may visit several different locations. So when the human is attached to specific locations, so you may visit laboratory and then visit registration desk. So it's the same person visiting, but it's two different patients. This is how this system works. So what I'm wondering is, when I search for a patient here, I get the ID of the found person. You see, this is an ID, but I don't get it here. I don't see this ID as a standalone field. I see some like bigger ID, but not ID itself as a field. So when I look through this documentation, again, I may see that the returned value differs depending on the additional query param. Representations. So if I say v full, I would get more fields than by default. So if I just try it and send, you may see I get additional fields, and one of them is identifiers, patient identifier. So this is what I need. Actually, I may use the same query parameter for find patient. So in this case, and v equals full, send. So, and I get the same full result for all found patients. Now, I have John Smith hard-coded here. It's not good. Definitely, I want to have it a parameter because John Smith is, it's likely to have John, any name you say, it's likely that system may have such a name. So let me better do it at parameter so the test decides what name to search for, depending on some other circumstances. So I'm adding parameter, call it person name. Let it be John Smith for now. So it's a parameter for this request, but I'm going to simply use this here in the URL. So I'm selecting this part and using inserting URL. So now if I send it, it uses the value from here, and I may specify it from the script. Okay, now when we go further, what we need is to be able to create a patient. So the next surprise is that you cannot just create a patient. There is the feature that creates a patient that simply doesn't work from this API. So I had to read through this documentation, and I found additional topics here. It was not like 1 second, but I found them about creating a patient with web services. And they describe the procedure, and procedure is we need to create a patient. When creating a patient, we need to already have a person, and the person should have identifier in the special format called OpenID, and it should be linked to location ID. So I need to figure out location ID, and I need to have person ID. So I need to generate all preliminary data to create a person. So this is how I create a patient from the person. I'm not going to do this right now. We will provide you with complete test framework, including this test case, doing all these things. I will just briefly show you how to create a new patient and then how to make a script. So if I want to create a patient, I'm going to clone this request from get patient. I'm going to clone it. I'm going to call it create person. I can only create person person. Now, instead of get, I will use, it's not patient, but person. Person. Now, I don't need this authorization here, actually. I don't need it anywhere except in the session. So I'm just saving it. Okay. In the create person, I need to specify the method post, and put information about person. So recommended and simple way for doing that is, again, call find patient, for example. And usually the format accepted by the create is the same as return by get entry. So get patient will return one of them. So just let's use. So this is the format that it should accept. So I'm going just to put it into the request body and remove something that is weird for me and try to leave something simpler. Okay, so ID should be automatically generated, display name also, identifiers. I don't need identifiers because it's a person. Because I got a patient, not person, so it has identifiers. Person has no identifiers. Okay, here is the person. I'm going just to use this piece. Person, 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 person. end of person. So I'm removing everything and putting the person, one person here. Now removing all unnecessary things. So I see the name is display name. Actually, it's combined name. It's for read only because usually I need to specify first name and last name. So let me remove this one for now. Let me leave it for now. Name, gender, age. Basically, it's very basic information, but from the UI point of view, usually that's enough. So just let me try with this limited patient and try to send it. And we get an error saying, so no content type. So the system didn't know in what format did I send information about patient. And since we know we're sending it in JSON format and we need to tell system about that. So we are adding header and there is a special way for doing that. We are saying we're choosing content type, set it to application JSON add and send in again. Now we have different error saying that some properties are missing, names. Okay, I didn't specify names and display name as I guessed it doesn't match. So I need to specify some sort of names structure. Okay, again, we are dealing with REST services. We have to guess, we have to type these structures, no other way. Nothing is automatic, nothing, we can generate nothing. We have to read docs, we have to guess, we have to find proper formats. So as I remember, if we again go to find patient, there was a structure called names. Maybe I can get something from there. Links, location, links, person, preferred name, and something else, names, you see? So I may just take these and then try to apply it to my case. This is, again, it is common approach with SOAP. We have to find format from the output. Fortunately, usually no easier way. We have to do this. Sometimes there is a comprehensive documentation with such examples, and so we do exactly know what to specify. So display name, again, it's not working. ID of name will be generated. So I'm just giving some name here, and probably I will leave it with just first name and family name. Let me call it Peter Pan. I checked it before, it's not there. So I may be sure there's only one Peter Pan. So for now, and age is, let it be 10 and send. You see, now I have no error. I have Peter Pan here. It's created and it has some ID assigned to it. So I need to remember this ID somewhere, because when I then create a patient, I will use this ID as a person ID for creating a patient. Now, I will stop working with REST services at this point. I will do very short thing. I will not do the whole script, as you may see, because it will take the whole webinar, and I will record very short script. So I'm going to make a script that does login, finds patient by name, and gets its ID. So I'm sending session, and it's login, and I'm hitting record. You see, I already have something recorded before. Let me clean this. Hit record again. So I have session get one step. Now I may validate that authenticated is true. So I want to verify that this response field is true. So this block verify appears only after you hit record. So you have it may do only with recorded steps. Then I'm going to find patient, it would be the next step, and I'm going to find John Smith for now. Later I will replace, when I have Peter Pan created as a patient, I may use Peter Pan. For now it's just John Smith. Okay, just sending again, and something returned one instance. So I'm hitting record. This is what I needed. And in response, I'm going to verify that exactly one item is found. So in the results array, I choose to verify that the length is 1, exactly 1. And I need to get the ID of the first person. So it's here on the identifiers, identifier 0. Here it is. So I need to read it. So I may then use it in other parts of the test. Okay, now I'm done. So I have some steps recorded. All I need to do now is to just create a script. It generates some JavaScript. This JavaScript is generated in the main test function. Space is not needed. And this is the logic. So first get session, then verify that we are authenticated, and then find the patient. I may just call this action. Call this script. It's slow. It's usually much faster. It's demo effect. Okay, so it passes. What I may do, you see it reads this ID, patient ID. I may use it later somewhere else. So I'm going to assign this read value to variable, and in this case, I'm just going to print it. Patient ID is patient ID. Now, let me play it again. Okay, this patient is found, and here is its ID. So we use an API now to do it. And it's a quicker way. Also, I think we may speed it up. We may set different interval because it has comment interval 1000 for API. It may be 0. We don't need to wait. It would work much faster, and so on and so forth. But for now, I'm going to go to second part of my talk about REST service. So right now, since it's a brief demonstration, I'm not going to make it as a part of framework because it's a bit longer task. I'm just going to make it as a separate test. Open MRS SOAP. Let it be desktop test, because for web services it doesn't matter. Again, I'm choosing JavaScript, only JavaScript for web services. Tools, web service, and web services SOAP. Well, first thing with SOAP, again, we're going the same sequence of steps. So we first need to analyze, then try, then plan, and then implement. And just like we just did with REST, we need to start with some documentation. And for Spira, there is a place, API Inflectra.com, containing description of the documentation. Oh, no, not Chronodesk. We need Spira team. You see, and Spira has a number of versions of the APIs. Again, it's another very common situation when you have many API versions. Sometimes they are back compatible. So you may just take latest version and you will have all features of previous version plus some additional features. But in many cases, they are not back compatible. And it's not the fact that latest version is good for you. Sometimes older versions are simpler to use than newer versions because they require more parameters, more specific data, and we simply don't want to bother with it. So in our case, due to I would, for simplicity, and I would use version 5 because it has less parameters and it would be easier for me to achieve what I need. Later, I may use 6 if I need it for something, but 5 for now, it appears to be the best choice. So here it is. Here is documentation about it. But first, I need the entry point. Entry point is just like with REST. I need to figure it out. I need to try it. My Spira instance URL is this one. So let me try to paste this URL here and take from the documentation a trailing part related to the entry point, this one. Paste it here and go. You see something gets returned. Short info about the service, that's good. Not error is good. Okay, with web services, usually there is a common thing, this type of request, question mark and then WSDL. And you see it returns some XML. It's actually a web service definition. This means we found the right entry point. Okay. So I'm putting it here and pressing get WSDL. Reprise is doing some magic under the hood. And it shows information about API entry points. So with SOAP, it's simpler. WSDL provides information about API. So my goal was to create an incident. So let me simply find something relevant. So every module is used here as a prefix. So incidents are prefixed with incident and something. Incident create is probably what I want to use. Then I may find the fields of the incident. Spira incident has plenty of fields. Basically, I want to use name, auto, and description. Usually it's required, so let me just find it and fill it. Description. Here it is. Something. Okay, and I'm just trying. I'm not reading docs. I'm just trying to find closest path by just trying. Okay, you see? So in this time, again, analyze is combined with try. Quicker analyze if you try and while analyzing. It complains about session is not authenticated. So I need to find something really related to authentication. Let me go here, connection authenticate. I think my user is Joe Smith and my password is demo password. Okay, so it's the simplest. You see, it's usually this differs between API versions. First version has just 2 clear parameters. Next version has additional parameter. Next version has some less clear parameters. So usually the more modern API, the more specific and more unclear parameters it uses. So I'm using the first one in the hope that it will work. You see it returns that connection result is true. So this it returned what I wanted. Now I may just go and try to create an incident again. Create incident, again, invoke. And you see, again, error message, but different than last time. Last time it was saying that I'm not authenticated. Now it's saying I'm not connected to product. And call connection, connect to project to proceed. Good. Why not? Going back, connection, connect to project. My project ID, I may find it out from the URL. So incidents, and this number is actually a project ID in Spira. Again, I know it. you may not know it, but you have to learn it from somewhere by trying, by checking, because we're dealing with some internals of the application. And you see, second parameter is called project ID specified. Let it keep false. Let's keep it false and invoke. And it says that result of the call is false. Now let me change it to true and invoke again. And now result is true. So I'm connected to project. It's again common approach with some web services created by Microsoft technology stack. So we have a parameter and a second parameter called parameter name specified. So if it's not specified, if specified set to false, then whatever we set to this parameter is ignored. It simply assumes that it's senseless data because it assumes that parameter is not set. Now, go back to incident. So we authenticated, we connected to project. Also now we going to create incident again. You maybe noticed already that whatever I fill here, it stays here. So it helps me with doing this try and analyze phase because data is here, and then I may do recording. So it helps me to proceed from where I stopped. So I may find that description is still set to the same value that name is set to same value. So I'm just going to invoke, and you see it says that it returns information about newly created incident. Now I may just refresh the page here, and I may see that incident is here. So some of you were asking us on how to create incidents while running tests. We have this question a few times, so we recommend you to do this way. So if you really need it, you may create an incident this way using SOAP API while running automated tests. Okay, so now we actually could really enrich this code. We could fill additional fields like incident type, incident priority, and for priority, for example, if we want to create a priority, we need to specify not priority name, but priority ID. And for that, we need to retrieve available priorities from here. For example, here is the list of available priorities. You see, so ID of the priority, for example, if I want it to be critical, I need to specify priority ID as 61 in the create incident. So I need to call several methods here to get information and pass it to the create incident in the future. For right now, I'm going to quickly record a simple snippet based on my findings. So I'm going from stage 2, which is try, to plan. Actually, my plan is in my head. I want to simply create an incident. In this case, it's simple. And then to implement the script. So I'm going to start what I just did from the beginning. Maybe just last step is disconnect. If it's here, it's good to finish with it. So let me just check. Okay, so I'm disconnected, and now I'm going to repeat everything starting from authentication, but in this case, I'm going to also record these steps. So authenticate, data is pre-filled. I'm pressing invoke. It's successful. So I'm hitting record. The step is recorded. Now I may, just like with REST, verify that authentication result is true. So we verify that it's authenticated. Now we go to connect to project, also do invoke. We connected, do record. Okay, something recorded. Also may verify that we connected successfully. So project ID is valid, everything is okay. Okay, we are all set. Now go to create incident and invoke and record. Maybe get should contain the result should contain ID of newly created incident. I may just, for example, print it. So let me do right click and do read. It would be different every time, so I can't verify, but I may read it and use somewhere else to tell about incident ID that was created. And finally, my final script step is disconnect. It was connection disconnect. Invoke and record. So this is my script. Last step is just to create this script. Script is here, and that's it. So my incident is here. I may now just play it. So if I need to change something like project ID, it's here. It's encoded as JSON, and the incident details are specified here in the incident create. Only one thing I want to show you before proceeding is, so I may play it, it would create an incident, so it's simple, just like with REST. Sometimes we need to somehow change this structure that used to create incident. You see it's quite long here because it recorded everything I said. Let me, and I'm using the following trick for this purpose. I'm going to the REST editor, SOAP request editor, switch to request response. There is a vacant request field. I'm putting here this text, this piece, starting with open curly brace and ending with final curly brace, which is actually a JSON formatted request, and switching to JSON. You see it formats this input, so I may use it to clean this recorded data. Just for convenience, I just need a couple of fields, not everything. So I need to remove this comma because it's last entry here. So this is my formatted incident info. It's much shorter and would be more useful for actual scripting. Now I'm removing this monster and putting this guy here. So if I want to use it with different incident name, let me add something. And now I may just play it and see how it works. I didn't refresh this page even after adding incident while recording. So when I refresh after this run, I will have another auto incident, and then I hope to have new incident. Okay, let's go here and refresh. Yeah, you see auto incident short. So I use different name in my script. So that's it. I'm not going to dive further. I'm eating too much time for this. Now, last thing, we will publish this full-featured sample and article describing it in more details, because there is much more that we demonstrate in this sample, and it goes far beyond the scope of this webinar. So here we have a framework containing some bricks for login, logout, and it's actually doing, it has scenarios, and one of scenarios is create merge patient. So what it would do, it would create a user in this, ensure the user, it will ensure the user using this SS test, it's actually using this REST API. Then if it's user not found, it will call this script, which logs incident in Spira. You may see that full create incident in Spira is much longer than I just recorded, because it's like more feature rich. And also for adding a patient, we have full featured addition of patient here with check-in, with filling all the fields. So it's like complete version of what I started doing today. So I may just play this, and while it's playing, we may finalize today's presentation. So I'm playing. So instead of showing you the final slide, I will just say that it's the end of my talk for today. So, Teresa, let's proceed to the Q&A session and to further things. I'm passing my word to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Alexi, for that in-depth presentation. For the Q&A session, I think our colleague Dennis is joining us for that.
Yes, that's right. So we have a couple of questions, so we have still have a couple of minutes to answer them. So the first one is how to make a base 64 encoding in my test.
Good question. So during this demo, I encoded it using the public website, and of course it's not good for automation. I need something to use internally. And here in this sample that you will get, we use I was just Googling for JavaScript version of base 64 encoder. I found some, so I just put it into the user.js for this subtest, and then I just used it to encode. So I have my connection credentials here, and I use base 64 encode, and then I use this encoded information and pass it to the request header for logging in. That's how it works. You will get this, so you will be able to see it and try it.
Thank you for the answer. And we have one more question. You showed how to test SOAP and REST APIs with Rupes, and does Rupes support GraphQL testing?
Actually, GraphQL is very similar to REST testing. So it instead of the difference, the real difference for us is the format of input. With the REST testing, we format input as JSON, while GraphQL has similar format. It looks similar to REST, but it like a bit simpler and a bit more specific. So in the body of the request, we need to specify GraphQL, and the response will be JSON anyway. So in this case, GraphQL is for us is the same as REST. You may test it.
Thank you.
Okay.
No more questions, Teresa.
Great.
Okay, thank you so much, Alexi, for today's presentation. To remind the attendees, we'll send out an email in a couple of days with a link to the recording of the webinar. We hope that you'll join us for the next and final webinar in the series titled Data-Driven Testing, which is scheduled for Wednesday, December 18th at 10 a.m., 2 weeks from today. So that concludes today's session. Thanks again to Alexi and to Dennis. Thanks for watching.